Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again. This is going to be the much more exciting part, because we're going to be talking about what we can actually do about the climate crisis and civil resistance. And there's a lot of amazing examples that we're going to talk about, and hopefully you'll find them really inspirational. I know both of us do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So just to get straight into it then, we'll just do a little recap on what we covered last time. So last time we looked at the truth of the climate science. We are committed to telling the truth, and that will include the truth of the social science, which we're drilling down on today. But the truth of the climate science is that we are in a horrific situation that should never have been allowed to happen, but it has. The truth is that all we need for the worst horror to unravel in our lifetimes, meaning that we here will not live out our natural lives, is business as usual for another 3 years. If we allow things to carry on the way they are for 3 more years, it's game over for humanity. We will watch the greatest horrors we can imagine unravel in our lifetimes. That's the truth of the science. Remember that we covered the fact that, the science has been dumbed down. Even the scientists haven't been telling the full truth in many cases, and we can look at people like Professor Sir David King, where we get this 3-year figure to make the difference. And we talked about this paper where you've got 2 degrees global average temperature rise actually meaning 7 degrees average temperature rise on land, and that means 1,000 million people on the move, facing like death and horror, like slaughter, rape, starvation in the next 10 to 20 years. This is what the science tells us is coming. And remember, we talked about catching that ball, that we've got to get to point 3 and catch the ball, otherwise it will run away on us and we'll have no power, no choice but to watch this unravel. So that's what's at stake in terms of the climate science, and now we're going to cover what we can do about it.
So lots of people all over the world are waking up to exactly what we've talked about, and it seems so obvious for me to say this, but people care more about their children and their friends and their family than they do about all of this other stuff that has created all of these problems. And we are the 99.9% being completely screwed over by the 0.1% people in proper power. So in one sense, it should be totally easy for us to deal with this problem. We just have to work together. But I think for such a long time, and I think it starts in school, is one teacher's got to control a class of 30 people. So it's really important that those 30 children don't know the power they actually have if they work together. There's no way that they'd be so easy to be able to overthrow the teacher, so to speak. So it's got to be drilled in from a really early age that you're kind of powerless and the teacher's in charge and you can't do anything about that. But as we know, obviously, of course we can. A few people work together. So we have a lot of power within us, and we are the majority of people. So when you think about whether you'd like to get involved going forward, I want us to keep a couple of things in mind. The first one is that you are an incredibly powerful individual, especially when we work together. And the second thing I want us to keep in mind is all of the stuff Larch has just talked about, everything that's at stake and everything that's going to happen if we choose not to act. So all of our plans that we've got going forward are not perfect. We're totally aware of that. There's a lot of things that could go wrong, but there's a risk that we absolutely have to take, because if we don't take risks, we know what's going to happen. It's very much about not what I know. Larch and I have done a lot of actions and campaigns in the past, and a lot of people will do stuff that calls to their soul or things like that make them feel good, things that speak to them. And we're not trying to sell you like a consumer product. It's not something that you either like or you don't like and you can just not do it. Obviously, we're not going to force anyone to do anything, but I really want us to try and get over that I don't really like it that much kind of attitude, because, again, if we don't all work together, we know what's going to happen. It's not about what makes us comfortable. It's about doing what's necessary. And we have a responsibility to be effective. i.e. we have to get to point 3 because if we don't, we know what's going to happen. So people have faced serious oppression in the past, and they've managed to put together campaigns that have been incredibly successful, and we're sort of looking at those campaigns and borrowing elements from them, again, because we have a duty to be successful and effective. So we're going to be talking about building a culture of civil resistance, because that is what's absolutely necessary to get us to point 3 on the chart. And, you know, there's a lot of joy as well that comes alongside that. It sounds like a really scary thing, but actually when we take action, it's going to bring us so much joy, and you'll feel a lot better about all of the stuff that we've previously heard. So let's start talking about some examples in history.
Okay, thank you, Gabby. Indeed. So this is the sort of stuff we're not taught in school, and we're not told by the media. You know, in school, as I mentioned when I introduced myself at the start of the first video, we're often taught, you want to make a difference, you study hard, you get qualified, people will listen to you. That's how you make change. Often we hear in the media, and I'm sure we'll hear it within the context of the Just Stop Oil campaign, you want to make a difference, you're going about it the wrong way, don't cause disruption, don't upset people, vote, form a political party, you know, go and demonstrate.
Write to your councillor, write to your MP.
We know the drill, we know the mantra that they come out with. So, but you know, that isn't cutting it. You know, and a very simple way to think about it is, how did we get the vote? How did we, you know, we didn't get the vote by voting. Yeah? Civil resistance is what brings about pressure for change at the speed and scale required by the climate emergency. Yeah, we're coming together now to tell the truth about the climate science, which means we've got 3 years left. What is capable of transforming society in 3 years? It's not voting, it's not forming a political party, it's not writing letters to our MP. It's coming together to create a culture of civil resistance. And we know this because we can look across history. And I'll just give a little example, a quick run through of the last a couple of thousand years of some examples of campaigns, or hundreds of years. So think about how we as ordinary people ended slavery. How we as ordinary people got the votes for men and then for women. How we as ordinary people in the UK got the right to roam. How we around the world ended the worst tyrannies of colonialism, for example, independence in India. How we ended apartheid in South Africa. How we ended the racist segregation in the United States. In Britain, how we ended the £23 billion road building programme in the 90s. How we ended genetic engineering. How we ended fracking. Recently, how we stopped Bristol Airport from being expanded and got road schemes like the Stonehenge Tunnel cancelled. We achieved all of these things through civil resistance, through disruption. If business as usual for 3 more years is going to kill us, we have to disrupt business as usual. And this is what these campaigns have in common, disruption. And we can then use the science of social change to look at what are the rules, what are the laws, what are the tips and principles we can follow to give ourselves the best chance of success. So let's look at those people that have studied these movements to really understand what works. And there are some basic principles. We need to create a movement that is non-violent, committed to non-violent. It more than doubles our chance of success if we're non-violent. The bottom line, the biggest piece, is disruption. We need to disrupt the economy because the economy is king. So when we disrupt the economy, we create this pressure for change. But we don't just disrupt the economy in a crude way. We do it with non-violent discipline, where the people causing the disruption are putting themselves on the line. And when we bring all of these things together, we start to get this massive power, this massive chance for change.
So the first example I'd like to share is about the Freedom Riders. So at the end of the 50s in America, during the Civil Rights campaign, they had the Montgomery bus boycotts, which were hugely successful, and it's where Martin Luther King got his name. And they managed to get buses desegregated in Montgomery. So after that, there was a huge campaign, and it kind of grew very quickly. And then they couldn't really make a proper decision about what to do next. You know what it's like when you've got loads of people all trying to make decisions. It can be really tricky. So there was a small group of people, 13 people, took the buses from all the way in New York and rode them all the way down to the south. Black and white people together in the north were allowed to sit on the bus together, and in the south they had very strict segregation laws. But at the time, the federal law said that you couldn't have segregation on the buses or anywhere. So the southern states were kind of disobeying the federal law. So these guys took the buses from New York and rode them all the way down to the south, and they were called the Freedom Rides. And while they were in the north, they had no problems. But when they got to the south, they faced a lot of violence, as they expected to. Before they went on the Freedom Rides, they did lots of non-violence training, and I believe they all wrote their last will and testament as well, because they were so sure that they were going to be killed when they got down there. So when they got down to Alabama, they were shut on the bus was set on fire. When they managed to get out of the bus, they were beaten up and even struggled to get an ambulance to take them to the hospital. People called them agitators because they believed in the cause, but they didn't agree with the tactics. That's not the way to go about it, people said. So I just want to share a clip with you now about what happened a few days after that first Freedom Ride went down to the south of America.
My phone in the hotel room rings, and it's the Attorney General. He has received word from the FBI in Nashville that another wave of Freedom Riders is coming down to Birmingham from Nashville to continue the Freedom Rides. And he opens the conversation. Who the hell is Diane Nash?
It was clear to me that if we allowed the Freedom Ride to stop at that point, just after so much violence had been inflicted, the message would have been sent that all you have to do to stop a nonviolent campaign is inflict massive violence. It was critical that the Freedom Ride not stop and that it be continued immediately.
Students from the movement in Nashville had been through violence. We had been arrested. We'd all had our lives threatened. We were ones that had not broken, and we were the logical ones to continue the ride.
We had had a successful movement the year before and had desegregated lunch counters. We had been watching the progress of the Freedom Ride. We were fresh troops.
Okay, yeah, so that's an example now of what civil resistance starts to look and feel like. These brave people, they sacrificed their careers. They were the first of their whole lineage to go to university. Their parents and grandparents had worked and saved to get them to university, and they gave it up, not lightly, but because they couldn't face another 50 years of racist segregation. They gave it up because they felt that was the morally necessary thing to do. They risked their lives, they faced beatings, the incredible sacrifice they made. This is what civil resistance looks like. And it is about it's about doing what's right, not what's popular, because they did all this, made this incredible sacrifice and commitment, and their reward at the time was to be universally hated. 75% of Americans hated them, and that's illustrated by the fact that the second ride they couldn't even get the ambulances to drive them to hospital. So this starts to get a sense of what civil resistance looks like, and the fact that they won, they got that U-turn in policy, is directly related to their level of commitment. They were willing to do what was non-violently necessary, and this is a key part of building this culture of civil resistance.
And of course, it was the Freedom Riders which then inspired the rest of America to set off the 1,000 campaigns, where we get things like the Children's March and Selma and Birmingham, and all of this Hollywood movie stuff is because the Freedom Riders like ignited the movement.
They showed that a win is possible, that civil resistance wins and can win. And as we've both said, you know, Just Stop Oil, the campaign that we're going to talk about later, is vital, and we're going to get that win of stopping new fossil fuel licenses. But bigger than that, we're going to show that civil resistance works and inspire thousands of other movements to step up in the UK and around the world. So this culture of civil resistance is just tapping into what humans do. When ordinary people are faced with injustice, we step up. And we can see this throughout history. We can see it with the way ordinary people took the Freedom Riders when they were laid beaten on the road to hospital when the ambulance drivers refused. We see it in the example that Tim Schneider covers, where in the fascist Germany, ordinary people stepped up to harbour and hide and protect the Jews from persecution. And the research that he's done shows that it wasn't any factor that you might consider, like whether you were Protestant or Catholic, whether you were rich or poor, that determined whether you helped the Jews. It was your sense of purpose and agency, your moral code. So ordinary people from all walks of life will and do step up. And we see this throughout history time and time again.
Yeah, it's, I think he called it self-knowledge as well. And I think we see a lot of that with, like, especially thinking about people I've met in the climate movement as well, is there isn't any, you know, everyone is so different. And it's just once you get it, I think people step up and are prepared to make some real sacrifices. And I think we're not going to get anywhere close to where we need to get without a lot of people making a lot of sacrifices. And I just wanted to, you know, because, I don't want to give up my job, or I don't want to give up my house, or all of this stuff. But ultimately, we know we're going to lose these things anyway. So surely it's better to sacrifice them now and have a real shot at success. So we're all in the same boat, and a lot of people have already made a lot of sacrifices, but we need to give more, basically. High sacrifice and high reward.
Thank you. Yeah, that idea of self-knowledge, which Tim Schneider talks about in his research, is part of building this culture of civil resistance, telling the truth together and then stepping up and seeing where that leads us. And remember the three key kind of elements from the social science that we build this movement. We know that we have to be disruptive, and that's economic disruption above all else. We have to be non-violent and disciplined, and then we have to have that element of sacrifice where ordinary people are putting themselves on the line.
And obviously when people resisted Hitler in the 30s, they paid with their life and were executed. And when we're doing this kind of work, the worst that can happen to us is we'll be put in prison as well. So I just thought that was a really important point to make, is that is the ultimate sacrifice, is what those people were doing. And here we're just talking about getting arrested and maybe going to prison for a bit. Not that it's not a difficult thing to do, obviously, but it's not even close to what these people have sacrificed in the past.
And to kind of make it even gentler for people, I guess, what we're doing when we're creating these campaigns like Just Stop Oil is creating these little baby steps. So all we're really asking you to do right now is to step into a culture of telling the truth and training up civil resistance without being attached to what that looks like. You know, we're all at choice at every step of the way. And whilst we know from the social science it will require a high level of commitment and sacrifice from some people, that there's always a range of roles to play. And what we really need is for all of us to join this movement together and work out as we go what roles we play.
Yeah, thank you, Larch. So I'd like to bring it up to date a little bit now, and I've actually got a video of Larch on a campaign recently before he spent 27 days in a tunnel in Euston Square Gardens as part of HS2, Stop HS2. So I'm just going to go straight to the clip now.
So we are at the last stages now of preparing for the eviction. Pretty sure they're coming in the early hours of the morning tomorrow morning. They have responded to our lawyer's letter saying an eviction would be illegal, claiming their eviction would be perfectly legal and they'll be doing it in a respectful, safe way. I've just spoken to my daughter and feel quite emotional. It was quite, for me, emotional knowing that I might not speak to her for quite a while, and just talking through what I'm going to be doing in the next period, the next few weeks, not knowing quite how long it's going to be, whether it be 2 weeks or longer, and yeah, just brings it home to me, the sacrifice that we're making, and yeah, the fact that no one would be choosing to do this. This is something I feel like I have to do because of this oppressive scheme that we've got being forced on us, and because of the climate emergency that we're in. So yeah, it's just feeling a little bit emotional right now, but yeah, it's all part of it. Yeah, if enough people allow themselves to feel these emotions, then we can actually face the truth and start dealing with the shit that we're dealing with. So bring on the emotions, bring on the real truth, and bring on the action to deal with it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing, that clip.
You look knackered.
You can see I haven't slept much for a while. It's like often with these actions, the build-up is so tiring because you're trying to get everything done, and then actually it's a bit of a relief when you're actually in the tunnel because you've done the hard work. And there's always a moment, just to share this as well, around fear. Like, the greatest tool the government has and authorities have ever had to control us is fear. And so that manifests in many ways, just like soft denial manifests in many ways. So for me, for example, every action I've ever done, there's been a little voice going, just don't get out of bed. You know, it's scary, you know, it's cold and scary out there. But I know that voice now, and I know that I can just work through that and still take action. And I end up getting so much more empowerment and connection when I take action than if I don't. And so just talk a minute about the Extinction Rebellion that we did in, particularly the one in 2019, April 2019, when we occupied 5 sites in London.
Pink boat.
We had the Pink Boat, we had Waterloo Bridge, the Garden Bridge.
Some of the capital's busiest roads were blocked today by protesters demanding action on climate change. Thousands gathered at 5 central locations, some gluing themselves to roads and offices. Overall, the protests were peaceful, but tonight there have been some arrests. We'll get the latest in a moment, but first, this report from our environment correspondent, Tom Edwards.
Just after 11 this morning, the protest began. Organised, coordinated and very disruptive, the group Extinction Rebellion blocked key crossings and junctions. Here, Waterloo Bridge became a garden.
We want attention drawn to the fact that climate change is happening. Stop all this, distractions about Brexit and stuff. The climate needs attention here.
As the disruption spread, Oxford Circus was blocked with a boat. And the roads around Marble Arch were also taken over.
We set ourselves the goal of shifting the Overton window of what's politically discussed, acceptable to discuss around this, and we achieved that. You know, so before Extinction Rebellion came along, we weren't talking about extinction and we weren't talking about an emergency. But after that mobilisation, when we had, 10,000 people on the streets for 10 days, and we got well over 1,000 arrests, then suddenly it shifted things. And within a few weeks, we had Parliament declaring a climate and nature emergency on the 1st of May 2019. So we were incredibly successful, and it shows that these techniques work. Straight after that, Extinction Rebellion had 200,000 people sign up and join the mailing list. And there's a bit of footage here to show you of that rebellion and of some of the things Extinction Rebellion have done.
Change is coming, we are few but we are strong. Time's been wasted and we haven't got too long. Mother's dying, we can feel it in our bones. So we're rebelling on a system that is wrong. Change is coming, we are few but we are strong. Time's been wasted and we haven't got too long. Mother's dying, we can feel it in our bones. So we're rebelling is wrong. Change is coming, we are few but we are strong. Time's been wasted and we haven't got too long. Mothers dying, we can feel it in our bones. So we're rebelling on a system that is wrong. Change is coming, we are few but we are strong. Time's been wasted and we haven't got too long. Mothers dying, we can feel it in our bones. So we're rebelling on a system that is wrong. Change is coming, we are few but we are strong. Time's been wasted and we haven't got too long. Mothers dying, we can feel it in our bones. So we're rebelling on a system that is
There's also a amazing film called The Troublemaker on Vimeo as well, if you want to watch that. Like, talk about, like, it really pumps me up when I watch that for civil resistance. So if you get time to watch that, do give that a watch as well.
I've actually not seen it yet, so I'm quite excited to see
In
that.
for a treat.
Yeah.
So another example I like to give, so obviously we had thousands of arrests at the April Rebellion and the October Rebellion. So then everyone had a lot of court dates as well. So they had a series of people did this thing called disobey in the dock, where you were protesting in the courtroom effectively. And when you do that, you are in contempt of court. And when in a magistrate's court, contempt of court will, most of the time it will get you a couple of weeks in prison. And we had a series of people go down for a couple of weeks at a time. And I just wanted to share my favourite disobey in the dock moment from that series, because it is just a joy to watch. So this is Reverend Sue Parfitt, who's 79 years old, a reverend, and she's protesting in the courtroom about the court's complicity in the climate crisis.
You're saying I'm guilty of this offence, yes. I reject this verdict. This court is complicit. Is it working?
Yes, it's working.
This court is complicit. And this court is complicit with the government's inaction. And I am filming this because I am taking a further action against what the complicity of this court is with the government's inaction. I'm glued on here and I'm live streaming this so that you know that I am protesting at the complicity of this court. It's not me that's guilty, it's the government that's guilty. They are guilty of huge dereliction of duty, and all of us, all of you who have children, I don't have children, I do it for your children and your grandchildren, and it's no good pretending not to listen, because this is really important. Could I have my bundle back, by the way?
Apologies, sir.
Thank you. I've got a banana here that I could have, yes. That's a good idea. And Barbara gave me a banana and one of those nice chewy things.
Yeah. So, oh look, they're giving us lots of love hearts.
Oh, that's nice.
And not for eating our sandwiches.
Thank you. Hello? What's going on here?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. What have you used to glue yourself to the table with?
Super glue of
Super
some sort.
Okay. How long ago did you do that?
20 minutes, half an hour.
Half an hour maybe.
Okay. What's the reason why you've done it?
Well, we're protesting about, I'm very glad you want to know, we'll tell you. We're protesting about the complicity of the court with the government in not dealing with the most appalling emergency we're facing that human beings have ever faced.
Right. They've told me they're taking my phone, so I'm going to turn this off.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, I just love Sue Parfitt as an example.
Joy.
So we mentioned the Freedom Riders, and really encourage, and the Children's March. Really encourage people to watch those videos. And we have these living present day examples, and Sue Parfitt is a great example of what civil resistance looks like. So gracious, humble, and powerful. So let's learn. We mentioned this full range of movements across history. We just mentioned Extinction Rebellion. Insulate Britain is the latest, is a recent example of civil resistance in action that we can learn from. With just 170 people changed the conversation around insulation. So the BBC environment correspondent Roger Harrabin said Insulate Britain achieved more in 3 weeks than he and his colleagues had achieved in 30 years of using the proper channels to try and lobby and raise awareness around insulation and retrofitting of homes. So this thing works. You know, Keir Starmer put it at the centre of his party speech in the middle of the disruption. He was slagging off the tactics, but he was fully embracing the demands. This thing works. And we went from, Insulate Britain went from 0 to 77% public recognition within a few weeks. And these things, once you get this moment of the whirlwind and you generate this level of interest, you know, it kind of pulls people along with it. And I love the fact that at Halloween, during the disruption with Insulate Britain, people were dressing up as Insulate Britain as part of their Halloween costumes. It shows that this thing is getting a life of its own, and this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the moment of the whirlwind.
I also wanted to mention that whenever we do our campaigns, we have a blue lights ambulance policy as well, because that's the thing I just get asked the most because of the right-wing media, and they're like, Insulate Britain loves stopping people getting to hospital. And it's obviously everything's work. You know, we're here because we care about people and we care about life. So that's really worked into all of the campaigns, is how to be as safe as possible. And we always let ambulances pass on the Insulate Britain campaign, obviously. Yeah, not really to do with the talk, but I felt it really important to mention because we just get asked about it a lot. I wanted to also talk about popularity. So obviously, when we did the Insulate Britain campaign, we were very unpopular. And the biggest thing we heard was, I agree with the cause, but not the tactics. And people kind of said, well, don't you have to have public support? You're not bringing the public with you. Like, it's all about public support. And on that, I just kind of wanted to explain that just as the Freedom Riders and the suffragettes. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was popularity, and we've kind of already touched on it, but I just wanted to explain it a bit more, because people say all of the time, you've not got the public support, bring the public with you. But let's remember the suffragettes, the Freedom Riders never had public support at the time of their campaign. We look back on history with rose-tinted glasses and think they were just the most wonderful people. But like I said, at the time, everyone hated them. What we have to do is be non-violent with our cause, and we're annoying, we're breaking the law, we know we're doing the wrong thing. But what that's met with is such a heavy response from the government with violence, for example, that the rest of the public then goes, well, they shouldn't be doing that, but you don't treat them like that. And that's where we kind of tip the balance. So we saw it on the Children's March. The children should be in school, the children shouldn't be protesting. And then they set the police dogs on the children, and that's when it tipped. And they went, well, you don't put police dogs on children. And that's what we try and do with our campaigns. We know we shouldn't be doing this, but we're doing it for a very good reason. We showed massive oppression, and then the public opinion tips. So I just wanted to try and explain that in a way that makes the public support thing a little bit easier to understand.
Thank you. And just to pick up on that, so what we're doing when we're creating disruptive action that's non-violent and has an element of self-sacrifice is we're creating a dilemma for the authorities, a dilemma action. Do they let us carry on like they did for the first 10 days in April 2019 with Extinction Rebellion, or do they repress? And if they repress, that's when they get a backlash against them, because the public are going, that's not okay, you don't treat ordinary peaceful people like that.
Yeah, we're not going to get anywhere close to where we want to without pissing a lot of people off. And that's just, unfortunately, the nature of the game. Our success with the Just Stop Oil campaign is very much in the numbers. So with the Freedom Riders campaign, I think they had over 400 people in Parchment Prison going down on these buses before the government gave in and gave them what they wanted. Had they have had 100 people less, they might not have been successful and, set off all these other campaigns. So the success for us is very much in the numbers.
So I just want to say one more thing about popularity, this tension. all of the work we do when we're facing this climate emergency and stepping up to tell the truth, it's full of tensions, right? So, you know, on the one hand, we're telling the truth, but then we're in soft denial. On the other hand, it's an emergency, but we know that it's going to take years. So it's full of tensions. We don't want to disrupt this. We're doing it for everyone, but we're going to upset people in the process. And so one of those tensions is around just that, the fact that we need to cause an intolerable level of disruption. Absolutely intolerable. If it's not intolerable, we'll fail.
Then they'll tolerate it.
Exactly. So it has to be so intolerable that we win. But that is, so whilst, just to be honest here, whilst in part one video we said, come and watch this video because it's the good news. Well, it is, that is true. And it's also the bad news, because the bad news is that it's not easy. It involves such a high level of disruption that we will be unpopular. But the challenge is to be not so universally hated that the government could ignore us. So as long as we keep 5% or more of the public on board and supportive of our tactics as well as our aims at every stage, then the evidence suggests we'll pull through and win, because when the government starts to repress, more and more people will go, oh my God, that's not okay, and they'll sympathise with us. So it's a nuanced thing. There's a balance here. We know we're not going to be popular, but we can't afford to be universally hated. But our suggestion is, in the face of societal collapse and the systemic lies of the oppressors and the governments for years, that we'll bring enough people with us, even in the face of the disruption we have to cause.
Yeah, and we're not in denial in the sense that if we think we win this campaign, then we solve the climate crisis and we can all go home. That's not the case. The real goal of Just Stop Oil is to inspire the world that civil resistance works. Because like I said, we're the 99.9%. If we wanted to wake up tomorrow and deal with the climate crisis, we absolutely could, but people think it's not possible. So what we need to do is generate this win and inspire the rest of the world that civil resistance works.
Great. And so you mentioned Just Stop Oil. Do you want to tell us what the demand is?
I do. Okay. So the demand is super easy, super winnable. Slightly worried they're going to give us what we want without us actually doing the campaign, but we'll see how it plays out. So the demand is...
I really don't think there's any fear of that, because the fossil fuel lobby is the most powerful lobby group humanity has ever created, and that's why we're in this mess. And they're not going to give up yet, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I mean, I hope I'm right, but you know, probably you are right. So the demand is that the UK government makes a statement that it will immediately halt all future licensing and consents for exploration, development and production of fossil fuels in the UK. So that's all new developments. That's not stop the developments that already exist.
So the idea is there that it's a very low, moderate demand, just like we've seen the Freedom Riders did and many other successful campaigns have done. Any reasonable onlooker will go, of course.
Obviously, we shouldn't be looking for more oil, yeah.
When we've got 3 years left to sort this out. Okay, so how are we going to do it? First part of this is mobilisation, getting lots and lots of people on board, doing these videos, doing face-to-face meetings up and down the country. We're doing 20 a week at the moment, and that's just within the geographical areas. We're also, you know, you're working with
I'm
students.
with a group called Youth Climate Swarm, and we're visiting universities, 100 universities over the next 10 weeks to try and mobilise 1,000 students, which is going very well.
So we're doing this, we're introducing people to the truth of the climate science and the social science, and then we're training up. So we've got one of the great innovations from Insulate Britain was to ramp up the training of non-violent direct action. And just like we saw the Freedom Riders, they trained intensively for a week before that first Freedom Ride. Well, we've developed a one-day training, which is really, really powerful. All of us that have done it say, yeah, not only do you feel confident and bring this confidence and skills that you can take to every part of your life, you're also training up with other people. You're getting this sense of, I'm not on my own telling the truth. So it's a really brilliant,
really empowering.
Yeah, we really recommend doing that one day non-violent direct action training.
Yeah, and there's mobilisations happening in loads of other countries as well. So the ones I know of is the US, Canada, Italy and Australia are actively mobilising for civil resistance in 2022 as well. So as we know, the UK can't do this on our own, but we're not doing this on our own.
And we've got a full suite of things as well. So we've mentioned the non-violent direct action training. We have Zoom calls like building trust and courage and resilience in action. And another sort of follow-up second part to these introductory meetings on a Wednesday. There's a sort of Zoom call where you can start to meet with other people that are stepping up in this way, ask questions, and you know. So there's a whole sort of program of stuff you can get involved with.
Yeah, and you'll like train as a team as well. So when you do all of these different sessions, you're team building as you go along, and you'll create a group of people that will be your friends for life. And you just create wonderful bonds when you go through an experience like this with other people. It's really wonderful.
So we're doing all these trainings. What are we actually training up for?
Well, it's very exciting. I believe there's lots of different things that people can get involved with. I don't actually know specifically, but I believe there's a lot of things you can, sitting in the road and road blocking, just like Untitled Britain were doing. They'll be blocking oil refineries and doing lots of different kind of actions around the oil, disrupting oil infrastructure.
And it's much more targeted. We're constantly reflecting and learning and tweaking what we're doing. One of the lessons from Untitled Britain is feedback was saying it's not targeted enough. You know, one of the reasons Untitled Britain was so unpopular was because people felt it was a bit crudely disrupting the public, which was necessary to get the attention of the government. But what's being done with Just Stop Oil, this new campaign, is a more targeted disruption of the oil infrastructure of the UK to get the demand met of no more fossil fuel developments. And so what is the ask of you here within that campaign? Basically, the bottom line ask is that people commit, and we're having hundreds of people committing now, many more every day stepping up to click that link, the Action Network form. And the commitment is to be willing to take action to the point of arrest. So we're not fetishizing arrest. We're not saying it's all about whether you get arrested or not. That is one of the potential levers for pressure. We know from conversations with the judiciary and others that if 3,000 people get arrested within a very short space of time, that will be a pressure for change because the system can't handle it. But what's really needed is economic disruption. So if people take action in a range of ways which helps to contribute towards that pressure for change, then we can win.
Yeah, I think it's Gandhi as well said like they can't jail us all. So it's very much a case of, they can't arrest us all and they can't jail us all. So they're pressure points that we know with enough people that we can be successful.
And we can be really creative in what these actions are. And so that's what people are doing. They're creating different groups, action teams. And so there's a space there to get involved in whatever way it looks like for you. But the invitation is to get involved.
So what we're going to do now is, just like we did in the previous video, we're going to have a discussion about what we've just heard. So some of the options going forward for you are, we'll send you a follow-up email with the resources in. So you can come to a Wednesday Zoom, which is a follow-on meeting from this one, where you can ask questions, meet some people and learn some more about the campaign. You can come to the training day that Larch was talking about. At this point, you don't have to be totally committed. You can just come to a training day and learn some non-violence and see how you feel. You can sign the Action Network form, which means you're just ready to get stuck in. Or you can organise a talk in your local area as well, or organise another house meeting. So the questions we're going to ask now is, how do you feel now after hearing the civil resistance talk? What are you going to do going forward? And what support do you need to take the necessary action? So that's, how do you feel now? What are you going to do going forward? And what support do you need to take necessary action? And once again, we're going to just do a reminder to practice active listening. So when someone's talking, don't think about what you're going to say next. You're really listening to that person. And it's important we don't interrupt each other as well. So if you've got 3 minutes on each question, really use those 3 minutes to listen to each person. And if you're someone like me who talks quite a lot, we really need to make an effort to listen to the people who don't usually talk quite as much. All emotions are welcome, of course. No one's going to judge you for anything you say, so just be really honest in all of your answers. And avoid falling into solutions. So we need to do this or we need to do that. Just really focus on the question and try and answer the question. And good luck. and we'll come back in a moment.
Thanks. Okay, thanks and welcome back. I hope you found that circle and sharing as useful as I always find them. Thank you so much for committing to these 2 video sessions, and I really hope we can work together over the coming weeks, months to address this climate emergency. I know that we can make a difference. I know that we will. I'm not going to do anything else until this is done. So once enough of us step up with enough commitment and enough courage to tell the truth, then we'll win. So that's really clear. This campaign is also going to win because we can't afford not to. So whatever role you play is absolutely brilliant and needed. And so we're going to send you an email with some resources to read, follow the links, have some more time to think about it and chat with your friends and family, and then please kind of get involved. Come and connect with us on the different things that Gabby mentioned before the break just now. So joining the Wednesday Zoom, joining the full day non-violent direct action training, help to organise further meetings, whether face to face in your community or in these house meeting, video meetings. Sign the form if you can. Many ways to get involved. We've also got a function for donating. We really need people to help, even if it's a tiny amount per week or per month. Regular donations are what are going to build this movement going forward. Just my heartfelt thanks for you all. This is something I've chosen to give my life to, and it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. It's like, so the more you put into it, the more you get back. So I just really encourage people to take it step by step and work with us. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said everything I want to say as well. It's like, although it's been arguably a very stressful 3 years, it's also been the most rewarding, soul nourishing, all that kind of stuff as well. So please have the courage to go into resistance, because it really will be the best thing you ever do. And I think that one day the young people are going to ask us what we did when we found out. And I'd just like to empower you to think about that and be able to say that you did everything you absolutely could. And I hope I will see you soon. If I see you out on the streets, please come and say hello, and I will be so happy to see you, to know that, that these videos made a difference, and and good luck as well. So please sign up on the Action Network form, and someone will be in touch very soon. And thank you just so much for watching as well. So
thank you. Bye.